Good morning, fourth grade DLP. Today's social studies lesson will cover California history between 1800 and 1833. And we're going to be focusing specifically on California's history as it is connected to New Spain, which controlled the territory of Alta California. Some vocabulary that is important for you to understand before we begin are these 5 words or 5 terms that I want you to understand before we begin. Camino Real, which means royal road. Real means of kings and queens, or it means royal. So the royal road built by the Spanish to allow them to travel within the territory. So at the time that they arrived to the Americas, there were no roads that could have allowed carriages to travel. So roads were built for them to be able to move around within the territory. Nueva España, which is New Spain, is a territory in North and South America that was claimed by the Spanish crown as their own, and it was governed by persons who were born in Spain, and the Catholic Church had a lot of influence. Caste system, a Spanish system in the Americas to give power and rights based on race. Neophyte, someone who is new to a religion. The tribes were neophytes. Secularization, to move something from control by a religious group to a civil group. So secularization in the case of the California missions meant that the control and management of the missions went from the Catholic priests, who were part of a religious order, to the Spanish government, the Mexican government that took over at the time. And the Spanish priests were expelled from Alta California. By 1800, 18 of the 21 California missions had been built, mostly by thousands of indigenous people who had been the workforce to build these missions. And these are those 18 missions. Perhaps your mission is one of the ones that was built by 1800. This is a map of Alta California, which at the time was a part of Spain, specifically New Spain or Nueva España. This is a map of New Spain, Nueva España, and all of the territory that Spain claimed as its own in 1810. So you can see that Alta California is here. The government of New Spain was in Mexico City, in what is now Mexico City. So this was very far away from Alta California. And in fact, a lot of this territory up here had not been settled by the Spanish, nor Florida. And this is why they had established the missions in California, to have a physical presence in this vast territory that they claimed as their own. The main government of New Spain was in Mexico City, which was 1,737 miles away from Alta California, and it would have taken several days to arrive to California in 1800. The Spanish built a special road to travel within the territory called the Camino Real, or the Royal Road. In Alta California, it took 1 day to travel from one mission to the next along the Camino Real. I'm sure most of you know that from your research for your mission project. This is a map of the Camino Real that shows you the road from one mission to the next in Alta California. Nueva España was established in August 1521 when Hernán Cortés killed the Aztec ruler Moctezuma II in 1519 and defeated the Aztecs. Just like in California, many indigenous people died due to diseases and hard labor in the territory that is now Mexico. They were also the labor force in New Spain. For 300 years, Spain ruled under a caste system. A caste system is when people have certain rights based on their race. In New Spain, the Spanish born in Spain had the most rights and power. They were the Peninsulares. And then came the Criollos, who were Spaniards born in New Spain. Then came the Mestizos, who were mixed Spanish and indigenous, and so on, including persons of African descent and indigenous people. In New Spain, many Criollos did not like to have less power than the Peninsulares or the Spaniards. This made them want change. In fact, the Criollos were also Spanish, but they were born in New Spain, whereas the Peninsulares were born in Spain and had more power. In 1810, Bernardo Gutiérrez de Lara asked a liberal Catholic priest, Miguel Hidalgo y Costilla, to help him get support for independence from Spain. Gutiérrez de Lara went to the U.S. to ask for help, but that was going to take a long time. Miguel Hidalgo y Costilla decided to act before he came back. So if you remember, it would have taken Gutiérrez de Lara a very long time to travel from Mexico City all the way to Washington, D.C. And the priest Miguel Hidalgo y Costilla did not think he had time to wait. It could have taken several months, maybe a year. Hidalgo had the sheriff free 80 pro-independence prisoners. Then at 2:30 a.m., he rang the church bells. In front of the church, he gave a fiery speech called El Grito de Dolores Hidalgo that asked people to rise up for independence from Spain. He said that a new nation had to give rights to everyone, including the indigenous and mestizos. He needed everyone to fight for freedom. He needed more people to be able to fight this war. So he included the indigenous and the mestizos of New Spain. The war lasted 10 years. The U.S. did not help because they did not want to hurt their ties to Spain. This is a famous painting of the day that the priest gave the fiery speech that is now called El Grito de Dolores Hidalgo. In 1819, before Spain lost the War of Independence in Mexico, it sold Florida to the U.S., and the U.S. agreed to not take the territory in Texas that was being settled by American settlers. So this is the Adams-Onis Treaty, and Spain sold what is now Florida to the United States, and the United States continued to grow. Why does Mexican independence from Spain matter in California history? I'll give you a moment to think about that. Why do you think it matters? In 1821, Mexico gained independence from Spain. It took many years for the new nation to form its government, and the Catholic Church remained powerful. In fact, in the very beginning, the new Mexican government crowned a prince to be in charge of the Mexican Empire. That's what they called it. And so it was very difficult for this new nation to form a government that looked different from the government they had had for 300 years under Spanish control. And it wasn't until 1833 that they were able to form a new government that was more of, that looked a little bit more like a republic, which was very popular at the time after the War of Independence of the United States and the revolution in France. In 1833, the Mexican government passed the liberal reforms, which took power away from the Catholic Church, and it took their property away. In California, in Alta California, the Mexican governor secularized the missions. To secularize means to change from religious to non-religious control. In 1833, the governor of Alta California, Jose Maria de Echandía, secularized all Alta California missions and distributed that land as land grant ranchos. The land was supposed to go back to the tribes. This was the original idea. And it was supposed to go back to the neophyte families. A neophyte is a new convert to a religion. The Californios, who were of Spanish descent, did not want to lose the lands. They pushed aside the tribes to take the land for themselves. The tribe people who had lived in the missions became the workers, but they were essentially slaves again. Under this new era of the Mexican control of Alta California, with the Californios who are of Spanish descent, who took the lands that had belonged to the Catholic Church and were part of the mission system, and the indigenous people continued to remain as the workers on these lands and territories and properties for another 10 to 20 years. And once the United States took control of the land, their situation changed, but it didn't change very much even then. So this is a brief history of Alta California between 1800 and 1833. So now I want you to go back to the assignment page on Google Classroom and answer only one of the 3 questions that I posted there.